Good day. Haiti Oropesa for Florida U Judge, and today I have Hillsborough County's State Attorney Andrew Warren joining me, and he's going to come in to discuss the recently implemented Conviction Review Unit. He announced this unit last November, and so good morning, Mr. Warren. Thank you so much for joining me.
Absolutely. Good morning, Haiti. How are you today?
Good, good. And so can you tell us just a little bit about your recent election? You were elected in 2016. I know that in the past 2 years, there are things that you pledged to do that you have followed through with and have fulfilled. Can you just give us some of the highlights of the past 2 years?
Yeah, absolutely. We've done a lot of work in the last 2 years. I mean, our mission is pretty simple. We were trying to make the community safer, support victims, promote fairness and justice in the system. So we've implemented some innovative reforms to do a better job with low-level offenders, civil citation programs. We've changed the way that we're handling juvenile offenders to make sure that we're holding them accountable while steering them away from the downward spiral of the system. We're continuing to be tough on those who pose the greatest threats to our community: violent criminals, serious fraudsters, the serial recidivists. We've taken a different approach to how we are dealing with poverty traps in the criminal justice system to make sure that people aren't prosecuted because the financial hardship that they may have. We have embraced data. We are working with national organizations to make sure that we are evaluating ourselves and being transparent about what we're doing. We have been engaged with the community, from forming a community council to launching an annual report. Our next one is going to be coming out. Our 2018 report should be coming out in just a couple weeks. So we've done a lot of things in 2 years to make sure that we are fulfilling that mission of building a safer community while promoting justice and fairness for everyone.
And you know what? I want to congratulate you because during your campaign, I challenged you, and I know that could have served as a basis of maybe you not being incredibly happy with me, but you know what? I want to congratulate you because you have been the utmost professional to me. And in my follow-up in inquiring about issues, you've been incredibly professional. So I want to congratulate you and thank you very much for that.
Oh, thank you. Well, look, I serve 1.4 million residents of Hillsborough County, and it's humbling. It's a privilege to do that. I am the state attorney for the people who voted for me and the people who didn't vote for me. This is all about how we make our community safer, how we make our criminal justice system better.
Okay, so let's go ahead and talk about the Conviction Review Unit. I think this is fabulous. I think this is incredible. I think every state attorney's office should have one of these units.
Sure.
Okay, it's necessary.
You're right. Once an office is large enough, they really should.
And so you're one of the first ones to implement that. The Jacksonville State Attorney, Melissa Nelson, implemented it. Your colleague out of Orlando also has announced to go forward and reviewing cases as well. And so you're one of the first to implement that, in a first of its kind here in the Hillsborough County area and the Tampa Bay area. So for the viewers, particularly in your jurisdiction, can you walk us through and explain how this works, what needs to be done, what are the steps of this review?
Absolutely. Well, let's start with the premise. A conviction review unit is a specialized unit within a prosecutor's office to identify wrongful convictions and to fix them. I mean, we're trying to make sure that if we've made a mistake, that we have a mechanism to go back and do something about it. And the reality is, and it's a sad reality, that wrongful convictions exist in our system. They may be rare, but that doesn't mean that they should be accepted. And so we're now have a mechanism to go back and look to see if we've made a mistake, what we can do about it, and as importantly, to identify the common pitfalls that lead to wrongful convictions.
Which are?
Well, we can talk through several of them, and I will in just a moment.
Okay.
But learning about those things and teaching the office and making sure that we're not making missteps that lead to the wrongful convictions, hopefully prevent them from occurring in the first place.
Right, right.
So you had asked about what are some of the common pitfalls. I mean, studies of wrongful convictions show that there are a few different pitfalls that usually lead to a wrongful conviction, and it's usually not one issue. It's a combination of them, but it can start with a discredited forensic testimony.
Okay.
Failure to conduct DNA testing, for example. Eyewitness misidentification.
Which, by the way, now that you mention that, that is a bulk of the reasons for the Innocence Project exonerations eyewitness misidentification.
That's right. Eyewitness misidentification, discredited forensic testimony, failure to conduct forensic testing, often DNA testing, are three of the most common pitfalls. And again, usually it's a combination of factors that leads to a wrongful conviction.
You also, I think, in one of the news articles that were covered when you did announce this new unit back in November, was jailhouse informants.
Yeah, jailhouse informants is another one. I mean, and think about, we have so many checks in the system, from charging decisions to discovery where information is provided to the defense, to competent and excellent defense attorneys in our community, to, of course, the high standard of burden of proof we have to convince a jury, to judges' checks on the system, to an appellate process.
Right.
But when you're dealing with the volume of cases that we have, and this is a human endeavor,
That's right.
mistakes are going to occur. And I like to, I make the joke that in the history of human endeavors, if we had a 99.9% success ratio,
We wouldn't have a system.
That's right. And if I were 99.9% free throw shooter, Steph Curry would be calling me for advice. But if we're 99.9% in the criminal justice system,
I wouldn't have a
getting
job.
it right.
Neither would you, probably.
Um,
Maybe. A small
well, we
amount.
still have crimes to prosecute, but even at that number, we have 15,000 felony prosecutions every year in our office. So 99.9% means 15 people who are innocent are convicted.
Right,
So just
right.
the sheer numbers and the fact that it's a human endeavor, it's undeniable that errors exist in the system, that mistakes are made.
And any of the players in the system, from defense attorneys to prosecutors, could make an error.
That's absolutely right. And again, usually it's a combination of factors. It's not simply prosecutorial error or a jury error. It's a combination of factors where law enforcement, the prosecutors, the judge, the jury, the appellate courts didn't see something. And often it's because evidence hasn't come up. I mean, I've had the opportunity to sit with people who were convicted and sat on death row in this country for crimes that they didn't commit. And I don't mean they were acquitted on some legal technicality. I mean they actually did not commit a crime for which they were convicted. And there was a case where evidence was never tested for a man named Michael Morton out in Houston who was convicted of killing his wife. And when they tested physical evidence, it confirmed his defense, which was that there was a third person who entered into his house and killed his wife. There was a case out of the Southeast, a woman who was convicted of killing her newborn daughter.
Right, you were telling me about that.
And we were talking about that before, and it turns out that the child had a heart condition that wasn't discovered during the process, and that explained that the child had actually died before the mother tried to resuscitate her. So facts just come out sometimes after the case is over. And when I have people coming to me saying, this evidence was relevant and should have been considered, but we didn't know about it at the time or was ignored by the fact finder. Now instead of saying, well, there's nothing I can do about it, we have this mechanism to go back and review.
So we're all employed, and we will always be employed because there's always going to be crimes, and you're saying for the most part, there's a high percentage that everything's going to be done right because of all the checks that exist. But in the few instances, that's why this unit is very important to have, so that we can, at least someone has another bite at the apple, so to speak, should all the checks and balances fail to exonerate.
Absolutely.
Okay.
I mean, this is now the cutting edge of criminal justice in
Right.
this country. The idea that a prosecutor's job doesn't end when a case is closed. The idea that our job is to seek justice forever. And if anything ever comes to light that makes it appear that we may have achieved injustice,
Right.
it's our duty to go back and look into it and if we find a problem, to fix it.
Okay, so anyone that's interested, either the individual that's been wrongfully convicted who believes that they have, or a family member, could petition your office. And
Indeed.
according to the information that your office has put out, you want to make sure that it occurred in your jurisdiction,
Yes.
right? And that there's a phrase that comes out, and I'm assuming that's the criteria, there's a plausible claim of innocence. That's somebody that you have employed. Interestingly, her name is Teresa Hall, and I believe she's multifaceted in the sense that she's done the gone full circle in being a defense attorney, a prosecutor, and a magistrate judge.
That's right. So we've committed full-time resources to do this. We have a full-time attorney in Teresa. We have an investigator. We have staff members devoted because this is an important part of our office.
That's right.
And we were fortunate to find Teresa. She has, as you said, worked as a criminal defense attorney, a prosecutor. She was a supervisor in a homicide unit in Indianapolis, where she's from, and she served as a criminal magistrate judge. So she has seen the criminal justice system from all three sides of the courtroom. She brings tremendous experience and passion to this job.
Okay, so the application petition is submitted to her office or her division in your office is going to then investigate, see if it warrants further review. We'll do an investigation, and then there's another panel that's been created. It's independent to her, and
Right.
she will then turn over her recommendations, findings after she investigates anything that she right off the bat thought it merits consideration and investigation, and they will tell us about that. What then will they do, and who is this panel? Who is it composed of?
Sure. So let me walk through the 4-step
Okay.
process. So we have a screening process to make sure that really we have jurisdiction over the case. So we've had lots of petitions that came from other jurisdictions outside the state of Florida, or that were federal offenses. We also need to make sure it fits the parameters of what we're looking for. We've been very open, meaning very broad in the cases that we're accepting, but we're only reviewing felony cases. So once it meets those basic parameters, they're looking for a plausible claim of innocence. So someone who says, I'm innocent, I didn't do it, frankly doesn't give us a lot to go on to go back and investigate. Someone who is saying, well, I was convicted, and here was my defense, and here's the evidence that didn't come up, and there was forensic testing that wasn't done, gives us much more to go on. So now they may have established a plausible claim of innocence. So that's the screening process. The cases that make it through the screening process go on to a review and investigation. The review is reviewing the file to look at what happened during the trial and the entire case file. And the investigation is to use the investigative resources we have to go back and actually investigate the case. We may be investigating a single issue, for example, DNA testing. And we've proud to have FTLE support so that we can go back to FTLE and say, hey, we need to have this piece of evidence tested. The investigation may have more than one issue that we're looking at. And then after the review and investigation, and this, Haiti, was the part that you were asking about, we have the independent review panel. And we are honored to have 3 titans of Florida's legal community serving as external advisors on this independent review panel. E.J. Salsinas, former state attorney and a former second DCA appellate judge. Judge Chris Altenburn, a former second DCA appellate judge, and a recently retired former Florida Supreme Court Justice Peggy Quince. Now, these 3 individuals who achieved the pinnacle of their profession, whose reputation are beyond reproach, whose qualifications are just amazing. We are so happy to have them on board with this project so that they can act as sort of outside consultants to go back to the CRU team and ask questions after the review and investigation is complete. They can make findings. They can ask, well, you should investigate this more. What happened here? And then they will end up making recommendations along with the supervising attorney to me for decision. And that's the 4th and final step of the process.
Okay, great. Well, and we just had Michelle Lamble, a very incredible defense attorney here in the Tampa Bay area, join us. Hi, Michelle.
Good morning, Michelle.
Good morning.
So, Mr. Warren has just gone over the 4 steps that are going to be govern the whole review process with the newly created conviction review unit. Do you have any questions about that, Michelle?
Not at this time.
You
I do
don't?
not.
Okay, well, you just wanted to come in and say hello?
Yes, I did.
Okay, good,
Well,
good.
I'm
Michelle
very
probably
excited.
looked at all the information we have on our website about it, www.sao13th.com, sao13th.com. That's where we have the petition that you can submit. That's where we have frequently asked questions and answers and a summary of how the entire process works. We're being extremely transparent
Yes.
about how the process works because we want people to understand what we're doing.
Okay, so anyways, Mr. Warren, thank you so much for coming in today. I'm sure that a lot of viewers are going to appreciate greatly this information so that they understand how to navigate this very important mechanism that you now have that you didn't have before to be able to do this. Are there any other things that you'd like to address the viewers about?
No, I really
To your
appreciate
tenure?
I appreciate the invitation to come in. We're excited about the conviction review unit. We're excited about the other innovative reforms we've brought to the office. And again, it's been really fun and exciting over the past 2 years, and it continues to be my privilege to serve this community.